Hi, my fellow Americans. Today it's my fellow Americans, not just my fellow New Yorkers. As you may have heard recently, a few minutes ago, my father's law license was suspended by the New York State First Appellate Division of the Supreme Court. Now, the 5 judges that ruled on it, Judge Rolando Acosta, Judge Diane Renwick, Judge Sally Manzart Daniels, Judge Judith Gishi, and Judge Barbara Kaepernick. All 5 of them are Democrats, 3 of which were appointed by Andrew Cuomo. 5-0, ultimately. Democrats with 0 Republicans on there. Again, this is just unbelievable to see just how politicized all of this has become. I am infuriated by all of this, and any American that believes in an independent justice system, this is going after one of President Trump's closest allies. That's exactly what this is. And any American that doesn't believe that, they are just biased. This is unacceptable, and I stand by my father. He did everything ultimately by the book, and the fact that there would be this politicization in our Justice Department is disgusting. It is a cancer that needs to be cut out, and it needs to be cut out right now. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned. I'll have more statements later in the day.
This is Rudy Giuliani's son Andrew seeing his father's law license getting suspended in the state of New York and apparently thinking, hold up, that wasn't humiliating enough. Now, something especially telling in Andrew Giuliani's rant is that he claimed that the decision to suspend Rudy Giuliani's law license is politically motivated because all of the judges were appointed by Democrats. As if no ruling could be valid if it comes down from Democrats. By this same logic, does that mean that all rulings by panels of only Republican judges aren't valid either? If the issue is judges of only one party, then clearly any decisions handed down by a full panel of Republicans couldn't possibly be acceptable. But of course, I wouldn't expect Andrew Giuliani to end up being an advocate against all Republican or all Democratic judges because he's not actually concerned with fairness. He's just desperately reaching for any excuse he can find because he and his father are physically incapable of taking responsibility for anything that they've done. And one last thing about Andrew's rant, and that is that he claims that his father was only targeted because he's one of Trump's closest allies. But Andrew should probably learn the difference between correlation and causation. It's not because Giuliani was a Trump ally, it's that Trump happened to hire people who are corrupt. Giuliani isn't the victim here, he's the perpetrator. And so his corrupt behavior is only made worse by the fact that he's playing himself off as if he's the casualty. Now, Rudy Giuliani's suspension came in a 33-page decision by a New York State appellate court, which said there was, quote, uncontroverted evidence that Giuliani communicated demonstrably false and misleading statements for courts, lawmakers, and the public at large in his capacity as lawyer for former President Donald Trump and the Trump campaign in connection with Trump's failed effort at re-election in 2020. In perhaps the most telling part of the decision, the court said that Mr. Giuliani's actions represented an immediate threat to the public and that he had directly inflamed the tensions that led to the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. And in case there was any doubt, this clip of Giuliani on stage at the so-called Stop the Steal rally on January 6th should explain things quite nicely.
Now, if they ran such a clean election, why wouldn't they make all the machines available immediately? If they ran such a clean election, they'd have you come in and look at the paper ballots. Who hides evidence? Criminals hide evidence, not honest people. So, over the next 10 days, we get to see the machines that are crooked, the ballots that are fraudulent, and if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail. So, let's have trial by combat. I'm willing to stake my reputation. The president is willing to stake his reputation on the fact that we're going to find criminality there.
I guess when you call for a trial by combat, and that's followed immediately by a murderous mob bludgeoning police officers and trying to assassinate the vice president, then yeah, I guess you could probably say that Giuliani's actions posed an immediate threat. The suspension was also in part due to Giuliani's repeated false claims about Georgia's elections, wherein he told Georgia lawmakers that the voting machines were faulty, that thousands of absentee ballots were cast illegally, and that the legislature should appoint its own slate of electors for Trump. He also claimed, incorrectly, that suitcases of ballots were added to the vote totals in Fulton County, Georgia, referring to a video that went viral purporting to show election workers pulling out a suitcase of ballots from underneath the table and and counting them only after Republican monitors were sent home. Only that's not what happened, because what was in that clip was part of the normal tabulation process, and no monitors were told to leave, and there was no ballots inside of the so-called suitcase under the table. It was just an empty container. And those points were confirmed by state and county officials, including investigators for the Republican Secretary of State's office. In other words, there was unanimous agreement from all officials on both parties that nothing nefarious occurred, but that didn't stop Giuliani from claiming that it did. At this point, Giuliani will face disciplinary hearings and is likely to face permanent sanctions, which could still be months away and could include disbarment. He's also licensed to practice law in Washington, D.C., and this decision in New York could also trigger disciplinary hearings there. And that's on top of the fact that he's currently being investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan for his dealings in Ukraine, where he sought dirt on Joe Biden to try and sink his chances at winning the election. Prosecutors are investigating whether Giuliani illegally lobbied the Trump administration in 2019 on behalf of Ukrainian oligarchs who'd been assisting Giuliani's efforts to dig up that dirt. In April, the FBI seized his cell phones and computers, so yeah, Rudy's had quite the last couple of years. And just as a point of personal privilege here, it's sad to see Rudy Giuliani's downfall. I grew up in New Jersey during 9/11, and Rudy was one of my heroes. I literally had a signed photo of him and Yankees manager Joe Torre hanging up on my bedroom wall. Now, that's not to say the guy wasn't without fault as mayor, but I was 12, so I wasn't especially discerning back then. But the point is that no one was rooting for him to fail. He brought his downfall upon himself and tarnished his own reputation for a generation of New York and New Jersey folks like myself who looked up to him as a real leader. What's happened to him by his own doing is pretty tragic. But with that said, Rudy is a full-grown man. He's got autonomy, and it was him and him alone who decided to hitch himself to Donald Trump's wagon. So while it's sad to see what's come of him, let's not pretend for a second that he doesn't own full responsibility for his own actions. He allowed himself to become a raging lunatic. He decided to exploit his position of power and authority to subvert a free and fair election. He destroyed his legacy. Republicans like to call themselves the party of personal responsibility. It's about time they started living by that. And it should start right here with both Rudy and Andrew Giuliani. If you enjoyed that video and you're looking for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. It's a no BS look at the top stories of the week, along with interviews with the top names in politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, and more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, click the subscribe link right here on this screen to join the more than 1 million people who've already subscribed to my channel. And finally, to donate to my Don't Be a Mitch fund, where I'm raising money for a whole raft of different voter outreach and voter registration groups in the closest states ahead of midterms in 2022, including Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. You can find that link on this screen as well. Thanks for watching.